This is a fascinating report from beginning to end, but particularly I'm interested in the part you authored, which has to do with fertility rates in the United States and what that could do for economic growth. First of all, give us a sense of where we are on fertility rates in the United States and whether this is a temporary thing or it may take care of itself.
Sure. So the U.S. fertility rate has plummeted for the past 15 years. And so the problem here is that now we are at a level of fertility in this country that is below replacement level, meaning without immigration, the population will not maintain our size. And so what's been happening is for 15 years, annual birth rates have gone down, and now we're at a point where the average number of children born to a woman in the U.S. is substantially below the sort of magic number of 2.1 that would keep us at replacement population level. It's now 1.67. My look at the data suggests that it's unlikely to turn around anytime soon. So what we've really seen is that the decrease in births is very widespread. It's coming from across demographic groups. It's coming across the country. It doesn't seem to be driven by any sort of sharp policy or economic change in the past 15 years. Rather, it seems to reflect more recent cohorts of young adults having fewer children or remaining childless more often than cohorts in the previous past. And so this suggests that there's been a general trend away from having children, from having multiple children. And if we look to other high-income countries that have been dealing with this for decades, it's probably going to be stubbornly low. That's my best guess.
So, Professor, here on Wall Street Week, we speak to investors in particular. What are the possible consequences of that in terms of economic growth? Because really, we have to depend upon future economic growth. What is that decline in fertility likely to do to us?
The decline in birth rates has meant a decline in population growth. And the most immediate effect of this is likely to be a shrinking size of the working age population. So the working age population in the U.S. has been stagnant for over a decade now. And given the decrease in birth rates we've been experiencing for the past 15 years, in the not too distant future, again, absent an increase in immigration, we're simply going to have fewer people of working age. Now that's consequential both in a fiscal sense, meaning that it's going to put fiscal pressures on our social security system, funding for Medicare, disability insurance, but it also poses economic headwinds in the sense that you have fewer people of working age, and that doesn't necessarily just mean fewer people to produce stuff, lower economic activity overall. More worryingly, it could mean lower GDP per capita or a reduction in productivity per person, a reduction in living standards.
Which could have profound effects, obviously, on investment, particularly in the United States. So what can we do about it? Can we get that fertility rate back up, or do we have to find a workaround?
Yeah, so here's where I think we can draw lessons from other high-income countries, Japan, UK, Canada, other countries in Europe, including Scandinavian countries, that have been dealing with below replacement level fertility for many decades. You know, the first thing I would note is that despite efforts to turn things around, fertility has remained below replacement level in those countries for many decades. A lot of those places have implemented explicitly pro-natalist policies, things like baby bonuses or child tax credits, expanded parental leave, expanded subsidies for childcare, all things that should make the cost of having children lower or the ability to combine work and kids easier. And yet the evidence from those kinds of incremental policies is that they might lead to some modest increase in birth rates in the short run in particular, perhaps not persistently, but nothing of the size that we would need to really lead to a dramatic reversal of the decline in fertility or the stubbornly low fertility rates anytime soon. So, you know, that suggests that it would be hard to turn things around. And again, because it looks like what we're seeing is really just a move away from having children or having multiple children as opposed to any sort of temporary response to some discrete change suggests that it's going to be really hard to turn the fertility rate around. So where does that leave us? Well, the obvious thing is to think about increasing immigration. Now, easier said than done in this country. Congress has been sort of derelict when it comes to immigration reform for far too long now. But given these demographic trends, the imperative for immigration reform, for allowing more people to legally enter or stay in the country, becomes that much stronger. And there's lots of sensible reform proposals out there, ways we could do this. We could certainly have more of an employment-driven immigration system where, like other countries do, including Canada, where we allow more people in who are reasonably likely to contribute right away to our economic productivity. We could also increase per-country caps on the number of family members who are allowed to immigrate to the country or stay in the country. Beyond immigration, of course, again, these demographic headwinds emphasize the need for policies and conditions that promote innovation and productivity growth. Easier said than done, though recent spending bills in Congress aimed at investments in infrastructure, increases in spending on scientific development. All of those are encouraging. All of those are steps in the right direction. But getting innovation policy right is very hard. It will require a lot more than just spending. It requires having the conditions in place for competitive companies and innovators to flourish and thrive. This is something that we take up in our report that you mentioned. And of course, it will require a lot of investment in talent, not just importing global talent through more immigration, but also really building the talent pool among our native-born population here in the U.S.